Well, I'll kick off while my internet connection is not unstable. So hi everyone. My name is Rebecca. I'll apologize in advance. I'm calling from Broome, Cable Beach. So if my internet is a bit shoddy, yeah, sorry about that. Mike can take over the points. So yeah, I'll give a bit about my background and why I was interested in working on this project idea with Nicole and Mike. So I'm a high school science teacher by trade. I moved to Australia in 2011 and enrolled in a master's. And soon after that, I started teaching in what we call low socioeconomic status schools. I was really aware of the equity problem in Australia, coming from Ireland, where we don't have nearly as bad a problem as you guys do here. So it was very confronting to kind of come into teaching in Australia with this lens of, oh, you know, I had a great experience in education myself. I'm really passionate about science and I just want to go and spread the good word. And then to come into the system here and realize that, you know, I'll try not to swear at this presentation, but wow, the system, it just is failing so many kids. And I got really interested in this idea of change and what can we do to change things in the next school I worked at. Started looking at integrated curriculum and this concept of STEAM education. So integrating the arts with science and really just as a way to start changing things and to move to kind of project-based learning where it's based on kids' interests. And that led me into a PhD, which has kind of evolved over time to be broadly focused on just this idea of systems change in education and the mechanisms for systems change. And I'm really interested in mental models as one way that we can shift systems, so changing people's kind of deeply held beliefs and assumptions about how a system works and why it should work that way. And yeah, so I had kind of known, I'd met Michael and Nicole in various circles, and they'd been working on IDEA for a couple of years, and I joined as a co-founder at the end of last year. And well, I guess we'll talk about that in a little bit, but that's just, I guess, a short intro into me and my background and why I'm interested in this stuff.
Okay, so over to me. I've been involved in education for about 15 years. I started teaching in 2005 as an English teacher. So I did that for about 5 years, and I took a little bit of a break and did a year in industry doing some instructional design, some e-learning stuff, working when Gorgon and Chevron was starting to get going, and also the Department of Health. I did some work with them. A little time out of teaching, I realised how passionate I was about the students and their development, and so I moved back into that space. But I moved back into more of a career guidance role, and so heavily involved in vocational education and training, work experience placements, and those kinds of experiential learning, where I see a lot of students. It's quite formative, you know, in terms of identity formation and giving them the skills that they'll need post-school. So that's been my journey for the last 8 years in that career development space. I think that's probably shifted my idea around what education can be, and it's really become quite personalised. So every student I work with on a one-on-one basis, I'm looking at their individual strengths, their interests, and I'm trying to cultivate a program or a curriculum, some learning experiences that are going to allow them to grow and develop in that space. And what I've found over that time is that the system itself can be a barrier to individual development. I'm also a glutton for punishment and doing a PhD in career development as well in education. And certainly some of those preliminary research, it is a narrative study, but some of those experiences of students, it's almost like the system is holding them back in a way. I know one of the students that I was working with, she was really passionate, and she was in year 10. She was Skyping some of the orphans in Nepal. She had a background with some family there, and she was teaching them English online in that way. And one of her goals was to develop her leadership, and we talked about how she could bring some others along on the journey and maybe build that little enterprise up to be able to expand it. And I remember meeting with her again in year 11, and I said to her, "How's this going?" And she said, "Oh, I haven't been able to do it, sir." And I'm like, "Well, why not?" Like, "It's okay, it's fine, but what can I help you with?" She said, "Oh, I'm failing chemistry. I had to get a tutor." I said, "Oh, okay, you're really interested in chemistry." "Oh, no, I think I've got to do that to get a good ATAR." "Oh, okay, and what are you hoping to do with your ATAR?" "Well, I'm hoping to go into uni." "Well, what do you want to study?" "I want to study something where I can help other people." I've really got a passion for getting out there. And it was almost like this whole, but you were helping other people already. You were developing all of these skills. You're having an impact on the community, and you've had to put that all to the side to tick a box to get into university to then go and study what it is you want to do. And so there's a couple of these stories coming out, and it's yeah. So my whole thing is about trying to develop the individual, and so I've really got that passion for trying to personalize education and how we can move away from just the standard one size fits all model to bringing that through. Yeah, I guess that's my background.
That was a much nicer story.
Well, so,
You have a
okay.
very big job in front of you.
Yes. If you
Yeah.
feel free to, if you've got any questions or you want to say anything at all, just feel free to talk to us as we go through. So the current system, some of the things that we know, it's competitive with a clear hierarchy of power. We're really trying to develop student agency, and we want students to be self-directed, yet the current system really rewards compliance and passivity in terms of the behaviours that we're cultivating in the students. We're not really developing skills around, self-directed and independent learning at all in the current system. It's standardized, it's the same profile for everybody. We're not really trying to develop their unique strengths and interests. It's a deficit model. We're trying to fix the bits they're not good at. We're not really trying to accelerate the bits that they are really good at, in a way. So technology substitutes or augments learning. A lot of innovation in education, technology is the big thing that people talk about. But if you are not changing, or there's no educational theory that underpins why you're using the technology, then it's really just a substitution. A lot of the time we see, okay, well, now the students have got a laptop in class and they're watching a video on their laptop, and that's all great. But 20 years ago, there was a TV on the wall and they were watching that, and the same learning experience, is happening. The teacher or them are stopping a video, there's some questions, some group discussion. So the actual theory of teaching and learning that supports the technology is not really advanced much. And we see that happen a lot. And it's all talked about innovation with technology, but we really need to innovate what we call the pedagogy. So the theory of the teaching and learning that sits around that technology use as well. And it's very much siloed. And you know what Beck was talking about in terms of that STEAM education, or more of that interdisciplinary approach. That's really what we want. We want it to be more contextualized and real world. We want them to have ill-structured problems with no answers, real stuff that they're going to be able to build some skills on and work through. And the current system really says there is one answer. You write about it in an exam, and we'll tick it off and make sure that that objective version of reality, that everyone has to know it the same way. And so it is a bit of a barrier in that way. So what we've come up with is a model that really is personalized. We want to empower young people. We want them to be self-directed. So we want to co-design their learning experiences, and we want to shape the curriculum offerings around the student themselves. So they've got individual performance indicators, and so they're setting their own journey. We know that if you connect with the community, it can have a bit more in terms of emotional investment and motivation and performance. If you're doing your learning and putting in that effort and it's having a real world impact, we can see that engagement increases so much. So trying to build up and to bring that wealth of experience from the community into the learning experiences with the students. Tinker very much a design thinking process. We see learning as iterative. It's not fixed. We want it to be continuous, both in what we're developing ourselves and with the students as we all grow and learn together. We want them to build up an own portfolio that accelerates their strengths and interests, that's personalized and unique. And also when we're thinking about lifelong learning skills, that it's not just academic skills, that we focus on social emotional learning skills and also career management skills to get those behaviors and mindsets they're going to need to prepare themselves for the future of work. Yeah, so I think, the big shift for us has been in what are the metrics of success, and the current education system is very much around that academic exam. That is the mark of a successful person, and we think it needs to be more holistic, and we think we need to develop all of those underpinning mindsets and behaviors to get those enterprising behaviors and that sense of agency within young people, so they've got that active citizenship and they're engaged in the community. And yeah, we want people to question the value of the learning experiences that they're getting as well, because they should be empowered to go, look, this should be of value to me. What am I doing here? And very much it's just a dichotomy between you do ATAR or you do something else, and it's all the conversation about how I get to university. And really the learning experiences that they get as they go through should be valuable. It should be development all the way through. Beck, I think yours is the next slide.
Yeah. So yeah, look, our model is it's for year 11 and 12 students. When you look at kind of shifting the system of education, year 11 and 12, we kind of see as this really strong potential lever, because the ATAR exam system has such a kind of strong grip on the system, even though there are other options. So what we're offering is not like completely new. It's taking what is already out there and trying to make it the mainstream, and really shifting that narrative away from this idea of, oh, well, my child's really smart, so obviously they do ATAR and go on and do law, to being like, well, no, hang on. They can have a far more valuable experience if they kind of chop and choose and design their own learning, and ultimately show what they've learned through a portfolio, because universities are going to let them in. So yeah, we're taking all of what is the best of what's out there, and what the research is saying we should be doing. And our question was, well, how can we weave that into an experience? And so with year 11 and 12, with it being such a strong and potential lever to change and to have a cascading effect down the system, thought we would start there. And also, even though it's often seen as the most inflexible and conservative years of education, it actually, with the policies that are in place, you can actually weave it into this really engaging, flexible, real world hands-on education if you want to. So that's why we focused on year 11 and 12, in the hope that can also have that cascade on effect. Because I think once you take away the pressure of that ATAR exam system, all the learning from year kind of K to 10, maybe not K, but certainly from 7 to 10 in high school can change as well, because you've taken away that pressure. So, actually, Mike, can you just click, I think do 4 clicks and that'll bring up the entire slide.
Oh, sorry. There we go.
No, that's okay. I'm a big fan of the animations, but they're actually a bit of a pain. So when we're trying to narrow this down into a really short presentation. So I guess these 4 points kind of contrast what we're offering to the current system, again acknowledging that what we're offering is not completely new, and there are some organizations that do offer this type of learning, but really we want this to be emergent and self-organizing learning. So it's a bit of everything. I mean, students might turn up and one day they'll want to have one-to-one or more traditional type of teacher-student interaction, but mostly it will be peer-to-peer learning, online learning and network, so connecting with mentors either face-to-face or online based on their interest in what they need to know. So certainly they won't be limited by how much I or Mike know. And I always find that an issue with science teaching is it's kind of, you're meant to go and teach what you know. And I'm like, oh no, I only know a tiny bit of science. There's so much more. So we really want to connect with experts and mentors that can answer students' questions. And in some instances, obviously, they'll just work on their own. So it's really up to the kids how they're feeling on that particular day. And the curriculum and the experience is very flexible. Learning is co-designed with young people. So it's shifting away from that set menu offering that is the traditional offering, where you kind of pick and choose from a limited menu, to saying, well, there's certain things that we would like you to do, but you can choose the topics and the context. You could choose who you want to work with. There's a range of micro-credentials that you might want to access. So we just kind of have an ongoing conversation with you over the 2 years as your interests and passions change, and have a kind of a try before you buy model. So in some instances, students might want to go and do a bit of some uni coursework, and we can arrange that for them as well. In terms of technology redefining learning, I guess that goes back to what Mike said about the difference between having a laptop instead of a notebook to kind of write, versus having a laptop that allows you to connect with an online peer or mentor network that allows you to access portfolios and micro-credentials, so that data can really transform your experience, or sorry, that online learning can really transform your experience. And again, with data driving practice, I guess that comes from us as well. It's that we want to really harness the power of the internet and network learning and give that to our students. And transdisciplinary learning in the network ecosystem, because I've touched on that as well. So rather than having set subject silos, science, arts, maths, we focus on what the problem is that kids want to solve, or a broad area that might be that they might be interested in, and we weave all that learning together. Yeah, I guess that's kind of a bit behind the model. And just to go back to the model itself, so year 11 and 12 academy, we're going to launch next year. We're going to start with just a part-time program, and it'll still offer kids WACE equivalent units. So it's kind of bridging this new system and the formal system. And then from 2022, we're going to offer a full-time 5-day-a-week academy. It's 5 days a week, but obviously because it's flexible, kids might choose for it to be online, or some days they might be doing work experience or at uni or TAFE. So it's a very flexible experience. And I guess we'll finish with just this slide here, which kind of talks to that systems change piece and where we're coming from. I was really inspired by this paper that Cisco and the Innovation Unit produced in 2011, which was Innovation Ecosystems for Education. And this is kind of a hack of their, unfortunately, I haven't given them the due credit. Hopefully they won't get mad at me. It is on the other slides, but they put forward this kind of quadrant model. And they were showing that this is how we could develop an innovation ecosystem for education. So currently we have mostly formal, in the existing providers, we have both formal and informal service providers, formal providers being schools, informal providers being, I guess, anything you would consider extracurricular learning, clubs, so yeah, I guess a footy club, for example, would be an informal learning, but they don't generally talk to each other, and your informal learning isn't generally credentialed or recognized for entry into university. So all that stuff you do outside of school is just kind of extracurricular, and it doesn't necessarily feed into your portfolio. I guess where we kind of see ourselves is a bit of a bridge between the system and what this kind of new education ecosystem that is kind of much talked about. And the question is, how do we get there? So on the one hand, we are offering formal credentials in line with the current system. So students will be able to contribute to a WACE, which is the Western Australian Certificate of Education, through our program. But on the other hand, we're really drawing on that informal learning network, micro-credentialing, partner programs as well. So they'll be with us and we'll offer them some courses, but also there's so many cool service providers in Perth, in Australia and around the world that we want them to be able to access that as well. And I guess that's what we really think about as this new paradigm. I got to give a shout out to Sir Ken Robinson, who passed away 2 days ago, really sadly. He has a talk which I highly recommend, a TED talk called Changing Education Paradigms. And that was the first time that word paradigm came into my kind of lexicon. I became just so interested in the idea of a new paradigm. What does that mean? And even that word innovation, the word is kind of bandied around so much in education, but real innovation is this kind of transformational, sustained, significant change. And that's what we're looking to do. So we feel that in order to accelerate that kind of systems level change and to transform the experience of students, because that's what it's about really for us. There has been education innovations over the years, particularly tech innovations, but overall the experience that students are having and their narrative when they leave high school, it's kind of the same as it's always been. And we want to change that. So we see ourselves as an experiment that sits outside of the system, but we're operating alongside and we're connected enough to the system that we feel we can potentially scale that solution into the system. And so what we want to have is something that schools can run themselves. And again, like I said, these pathways do exist. We just want to trial it outside the system, a costed, relatively easy to run in schools version of education, so that this can be scaled in schools. And so part of our model is around advocacy too, and going to state and federal government if they will listen to us and say, hey, look, we've kind of done it. We've woven together all of the research, what industry, what the community are saying we should be doing for young people, and we've done it outside the system, but you can scale it very easily inside the system in these ways. And yeah, look, that's the plan anyway. And I think the last thing I'll say is we really recognize that one thing I've come to learn, I started when I started teaching, I was thinking, I started thinking about systems change, I was always searching for the dark overlords who were the evil group or governing body that wouldn't let anything change. And I guess what I've realized over the years is no, everybody I've spoken to in education wants the best for kids. They want the best for young people. But as a teacher and as a school leader and a policymaker, the administrative burden, we're so burdened with just getting by. There's so much to be done. It's very hard to stop and ask ourselves, how can we actually fundamentally change things? How do we do that? And so, we're really excited at the potential to work alongside teachers and schools, because there is great stuff happening. We just are, wanting to accelerate that, I guess. And okay, I'll stop talking there now. Mike, did you have anything to add?
No, I think that's good.
Okay.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Should we, thanks heaps, guys. That's so exciting. Do you want to stop sharing, Mike? And we can open up to the people here in the group. Please unmute yourself and ask the guys some questions.
I feel like saying, darn, I wish you'd been around 3 years ago so that my child could have used you. They've had a shocking time, but there we go. They're in uni now doing UniReady and managed to stuff that up as well. So...
Well, we actually talk about idea year 13. So everyone talks about lifelong learning. And so we're like, we're not going to boot kids out in year 12 and never see them again. So part of our service will be for kids that are wanting to reconnect and look at what pathways are available to them. So some to give us a call.
Yeah, well, she's hitting the same similar barriers at Curtin with UniReady as she was with ATAR, which was that she finds it very difficult to just absorb the info and regurgitate it. She keeps asking questions. She keeps saying, yeah, but there's another way of doing that, and we could do it this way instead. And it's like, no. Just do as you're told. Sit the exam at the end and be done. And she'll get there in the end. She'll be fine.
Yeah. It's challenging. And I ran a network called Coder Dojo WA, or coding clubs for kids.
Oh, yes.
And I remember we get these kids in there, and the parents would often say, a lot of kids were neurodiverse. And I remember there was one kid in particular, this parent came in and we were doing a presentation, and the parent was like, oh, he's got autism, he might not say much, he'll hang to the side. And this kid was like, just in this environment, this informal learning, he was amazing, he was just taken off. But I thought to myself, my inner teacher was like, I can see that you would be a real challenge for a teacher when a teacher has 30 kids they need to deal with, and there's just no time. But in this environment where it was just a little bit different, he was flying. So it's only minor tweaks, and it's just hard for the kids, it's hard for the teachers as well. Just little things need to change.
How many schools are you already in? In how many schools are you using you?
Mike, did you want to answer that one?
Well, we're not in any schools at the moment. We're still working on some partnership arrangements. We've been doing it for a couple of years, and obviously weaving in all of the latest research into what the model would look like and what would work. We've been doing customer discovery and validation as well around the model and getting some feedback. There are a lot of hurdles. Education is quite bureaucratic. There's a lot of, the regulatory environment is hard to work in. So we're just looking at a couple of school partners, and Nicole, our other co-founder, has been working really, really hard on that this year, and we're hoping to get somewhere with that in the next month or so.
Are you finding the public schools or the private schools more acceptable for the idea?
Well, I'll just say, so I'll clarify, with IDEA, we're actually a separate, we'll have our own campus. So our campus will be we haven't signed the paper yet, so I won't say who they are, but it's a co-working space in the city. So we'll actually have a couple of campuses around Perth, maybe around WA. But the idea is if a school wants to do it in-house as well. So our first campus will kick off next year, and then a full-time academy in 2022. Yeah, so we're still babies really. So, we're saying all this stuff. Don't get too excited until next year when we're actually doing it, I guess. We're like, we found the solution. We just need to do it now.
What does the Department of Education think?
Yeah, well, there's a similar model running, which is Sports Education Development Australia. And they're actually, so it's a similar idea, but focused on sports education. And done really well nationally, and I know they have a great relationship with the DOE. And so for us, yeah, the department are certainly aware of us, and we've been chatting to school principals. So look, at the end of the day, everyone thinks great, you know. It's a good thing. It's just the challenge for us, and we've got, you know, really, it's been really great and insightful, these stories, where on the one hand, I think people will give us that feedback, fantastic, yeah, we want to support, but you know, there still are challenges in terms of legislation and getting this going that make it hard for some people to consider about how they might run it in their own school.
So in Australia, we're one of the only countries in the world that has legislation around curriculum. So it's mandated that you must do the Australian curriculum. So places like the United States have a charter school model where you can actually be funded by industry. And so things like High Tech High and a few of the other ones there, there's a bit more room for innovation in that way. Here, the exemptions are Steiner, Montessori, and International Baccalaureate. Aside from that, certainly in the K-10 environment, you must do particular things. And so, you know, we're working in an interesting space. A lot of people, yeah, the feedback and even people in the system are like, yes, this is good. In my own school that I'm currently working at, I mean, I'm still trying to get timetable time. And what's happened is it becomes competitive. Everyone's saying, yeah, we need to do more around mental health and well-being. I'm like, well, how do we do some social emotional learning programs? How can we get that in? And it becomes too hard to fit in all of these other things that are non-negotiables that you have to do. And it seems like all of these extra things that we want to do, people go, yes, that would be great. It's nice to have, but I'm sorry, we need to do this, or this is kind of where we're at. So it is a bit of a struggle.
And I should add there, like, part of our struggle is because we do want to be able to bridge that formal and informal learning. So we do want to be able to offer students at the Western Australian Certificate of Education. And because of that, there are regulations and that we will follow, because we want it to be low or no fee. It'll be, obviously we have to have a low fee initially, but over time it will be free for students, because if we could just completely leave the system and say, we don't offer a WACE, you can still get to university through portfolio without a WACE, and that's the case now. But again, we want to be able to offer that initially and maybe move away from WACE over time. If we don't offer a WACE, it might be a bit more challenging for students to access. It'll be fully private education, and then it'll be a lot more expensive. So again, part of the challenge for us is we do want to bridge the current system and the new one. So it just takes a lot more box ticking and time. And I mentioned our advocacy piece, you know, that's something that, again, that'll be time. So we will obviously have strong research relationships with the universities and some private organizations, and funding is built into the model to fund that research. But again, these things take time.
We take on work experience students. So, you know, if you need a workplace that you want to stick some science people, then we're there.
Brilliant. Actually, you'll see that on our website when you go on. We talk about this partnership ecosystem. I say the word ecosystem, like I like that word, and I'm like, that is what it is, but it's so bandied around these days, and I'm like, it's kind of bastardized, as is the word innovation, which has also been our title. But that is how our model works, and it's very lean and agile, because we're going to have such strong relationships with workplaces. And so we might, let us know. Well, we have a few established partnerships, but we established a few because we really just need to wait to see what the students want to do before we establish any more. Yes. But yes, okay, we shall send you a student.
What sort of students do you think you will have, Rebecca? Do you have any, like, what's the typical student?
Mike, did you want to say anything there?
Yeah, look, I mean, we've got a strong, I guess, entrepreneurship and enterprising behaviours they might have done. So what's happened with entrepreneurship education in WA in particular is it's a bit of an add-on kind of model. We've got a number of people offering programs, and they'll do them for a term, and it's not sustained. It's not part of the student's development, but we're hoping that there are students out there that might get a taster of that kind of thing and go, do you know what, this this more self-directed, this where I'm going out and I'm sort of running my own show is something that I really like. And so we're hoping that they might kind of come in there as well. But we've also probably got a lot of students that are, I think the statistics were that 20% are disengaged, but 40% are quietly disengaged. So they're going through the motions, they're ticking the boxes, but they just feel like they have to do it because there's nothing else. So we're also hoping that maybe some students that are not 100% engaged in what they're doing and feel like this could be another model could come in as well. But it is initially, if we get this off the ground, it will be boutique initially, 70 or 80 students. We need to do obviously a proof of concept while we've got them in there. We want to build up evidence. We want to be more like, I think the Khan Academy have got a lab school where they're starting to work with universities and provide data. I know in particular, the school that I'm working at now, I started a work integrated learning pathway to university there. Started in 2014 with 15 students. We've now got almost 70 or 80 each year do that particular one. And so I contacted Curtin because I wanted some idea on the outcomes. So we're doing this work integrated learning pathway. They're accessing uni differently. So can I get some evidence? Is this being successful? You know, how are they coping at university? Have they got different skills? Ongoing, it went through 5 or 6 different people, and we still can't get any data. Nationally, there's a project called JEDI, Job and Education Data Integration. I think the federal government are running it, and they're actually looking to connect. So secondary school, there's a VET, unique student identifier, but higher education and employment, and they want to start to map the journeys through. And I think this is one of the issues we've got, is that we want some evidence around this. You know, we want to show certainty that if we move away from a more traditional model, that the outcomes are going to be good. And there's just no way to prove that unless we go ahead and we do it, and we get a better system for tracking, the evidence and the outcomes there as well.
So that you've kind of touched on the challenge for us there, is that so we will be in the next few weeks accepting enrollments for 2021, but we're very careful not to. On the one hand, we want to go out and share this and get feedback, but we have to be very careful, obviously, that the parents don't think, oh, we have this registered school and we can enroll and it's good to go. So we have to be very clear that, this is what the 2021 will look like, and 2022, once we've established a registered school partnership, will go ahead. So, but we did a presentation to the Home Education Network, because these are obviously families that, the system, such an ill fit, that just left it all together. We're like, great, come to us. Because, the feedback from the network was 11 and 12 can be a challenge, and often kids are re-enrolled into the system in 11 and 12 because it's very hard to navigate as a home educator. And from that, we got loads of emails looking, I want to enroll, like I've got a kid in year 7, want to get on a wait list. And these were fantastic, rich experiences that people were giving us just over email. And so it varied, the kids, and there's other kids that have subsequently kind of seen some of our stuff on social media and are emailing us. There's one kid I'll give an example of in terms of who our students might be. And he's in year 11. He's already got a marketing business. He's really amazing, driven kid. He's always up on stage presenting, but he's just a bit, he's in a great school, but he's just a bit bored by what he has to do to tick the boxes to get through the HR and into the university. So he's chomping at the bit. He's ready to go. He's already got his business. He's in the real world, but he's still having to navigate and do the kind of, boring stuff. No offense, HR teachers, I was one as well, but it's for some kids it is boring. He just wants to be unleashed. And then we've other kids that are really we've had conversations or emails from other families and kids where they're fantastic kids, very smart and motivated, but have just developed severe anxieties because of the nature of the system, and they're not, it can be really difficult to navigate that system if you don't feel like you fit it. And so some kids have chosen to leave that system because it's just too challenging for their mental health, to navigate it. And like you kind of touched on that, the kind of lackluster response that the system has had to the mental health challenges. And again, it's not the fault of teachers necessarily, it's just the way it is. Anyway, yeah, so, but we're for all students really, because I guess our response is you know, there is some options for kids that have completely disengaged because they didn't fit the system. But for most kids, they're just in there, but they're a bit bored. And we're like, oh, you know, this is an alternative.
You already have a team of people you work with, or you're looking for kind of a team, or how is it going to work when it's finished?
Yeah. So for next year, we have our team, and then I guess it just comes down to how many students we have enrolled, and if we grow over time. The way the model works, we'll have some registered teachers, some who can teach the vet qualifications, Cert 3s and 4s, but everything else will be, well, like I said, we obviously have a ratio that we'll have in terms of students to staff. Everything else is a bit flexible. So we might have consultants which will feature strongly. And by consultants, I just mean if our students are interested in something and you're running that something, hey, can we pay you to come and hang out with the kids and do some teaching? Because again, I guess our experience is we think we have a good thing to offer, but there's so many cool things out there, so that we want to keep the model such that we can fund cool groups and ideas and people to come in and present and work with students throughout the 2-year learning journey. So yeah, the core team will grow as our student numbers grow. It's set for next year, and everything else will be quite flexible.
Interesting. Yeah, because I think you need all those different disciplines to come in,
and
I guess.
Challenge for schools nowadays is the traditional model is that the teacher teaches, and these things are changing with the advent of the internet, and Professor Google basically answers all of our questions now, but it's still a bit too much the traditional way. And so this way, you know, we are more facilitators than teachers. There might be certain things that we are having that traditional teacher role, but mostly we're just facilitating it us to the kids, or what you want to learn, and hey, we could help you navigate to the internet to find your answers, or hey, if there's someone cool in Perth or even internationally. So we've obviously got strong international networks as well that we can draw on for kids too.
Is there a foundation, you know, something that everyone has to read, or you have to watch this film, or you know, this, you know, like, is there something like that, the philosophy that's it's based on?
So I mean, look, obviously we're trying to work within the current parameters of the system. So so there's literacy and numeracy in there, you know, to a particular level. But what we're trying to do is contextualize what we've got with the syllabus into more real world and applicable contexts. So there will be programs that they need to do, but a lot of it will be around entrepreneurship and narratives in that, and also the future of work and sort of you know, extended science and advanced thinking, you know, around those areas and where things may go. They will be sort of the things that all students will do, and that will contribute then to them getting hopefully their secondary certificate as well. We've talked about vet, and there is a training package change, you know, from business into more of an entrepreneurship and innovation strand. PwC have been working on that. But the other thing is, you know, we want to do some more project-based learning. So the UN Global Goals, the Sustainable Development Goals are going to be one of the things that they work on each day. They can self-organize into groups or teams of their interests with particular goals or problems that they want to work on, and will help to facilitate that. And that's where we would then leverage off the networks of expertise, you know, if that's someone in the circular economy, and to try and get that knowledge through there. Challenge-based learning, I was recently involved in a STEM for Innovation project as well. And so Dr. Fiona Wood took them through a virtual tour of Fiona Stanley Hospital and set some challenges with COVID, and said, look, we're currently wrapping all of these instruments, we're wrapping them in plastic because of the particulate matter and how all of this sort of spreads. And the other thing is, on an operating table, when I've got a patient with, you know, 90% burns, I can't move them around in the middle of surgery. And so she actually set these challenges, and I had some students that, you know, they had no knowledge in this area, but suddenly this was a problem, a challenge. It was real world, it was messy, and they got involved and they pitched some ideas back to Fiona Wood, and it was just amazing to see what the students were able to come up with in this real world context. So it's those kinds of things we want to shift. We want to bring that. We want the partnerships between industry that I guess, what's seen as informal or extracurricular stuff. We want to bring that all into the school. We want schools to be more permeable because they're quite insulated at the moment. And I mean, even the argument in my current school, we do release students in senior school for a couple of days a week. Some other schools don't do that. Oh no, you know, they need to be here 5 days a week. They need to be doing this type of thing. And you kind of go, well, no, we want them to be engaged in the community. There's so much more to learn. And so, yeah, we want to broker those experiences a little bit more in that.
I'll just add a little bit to that as well, that obviously our website is quite lean at the minute. It's just pretty much a landing page, but it will be built out to include our vision and our values as well. And Mike mentioned the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So at the end of the day, we're talking to the New Economy Network here for a reason, because, you know, I've met, you know, Kate at Hellenic events around the circular economy, and Adam, obviously we've been involved in a few things together because we're really passionate about not only doing education different, but we're interested in systems change broadly. And we talk about entrepreneurship, and I guess what we want to be clear is we're using that because that really is this these 21st century skills, high order thinking. So it's not just let's make all our kids businessmen and women and out they go and you know, make their millions in the current system. I guess the kind of values around sustainable development and that vision for the future that I guess would be aligned with NENA's vision as well. And that's something that will be embedded in our program. And you mentioned kind of what's our philosophy. Well, I think, you know, philosophy and ethics and all that kind of thinking and talking and will be kind of embedded throughout. Actually, a good concept that we talk about a lot is that Japanese word ikigai, which is that your reason for being. This is, of course, my Google interneting that's telling me this. I haven't spoken to a Japanese person about ikigai yet, so apologies if I get it wrong. But you might have seen that kind of Venn diagram, I guess, and it talks about helping. Well, what we talk about in that context is helping young people to discover, you know, what are your passions? I already know what their passions and interests are. What are you good at? What does the world need? And how can you make a living out of that? And what kind of living do you want to make? And at the center of that, when all of those things align, that's what this Japanese term ikigai comes in, and that is your reason for being, where all of those things align. And so really part of a large chunk of the program is that self-discovery about and I think Mike had mentioned that before, what are your values, what are your interests, what are your passions, what are your talents? And let's just take that 2 years to explore the world and explore the types of careers that you could create by aligning those things. So yeah, that, I guess as our website expands, that will become more clear in the language that we're using, that it's a new paradigm for education, and it's about helping kids to be able to create this new future as well.
And I think, you know, it's that I think of school as a human accelerator. So a lot of seed funding goes into business ideas. You know, this ignition is one business idea that you've got. Whereas if we just start investing in people to have those enterprising behaviors, that entrepreneurial mindset, and support them as they develop through, they're going to be people that might have 5 or 10 different business ideas later on. So if we can get that right from the beginning with this kind of model, then it's not just, okay, we're going to invest in one business idea here, we're going to invest in people, and the people are then going to grow that in the future. So I think, you know, and that's hopefully what this school will then be.
So actually that leads me to my next question. You talked about a vision, and you talk about what the Idea Academy could look like. What is your dream? And if you had $10 million to build the Idea Academy, what would it look like? What is your dream for the Academy?
Well, I know we all three have similar dreams, but they're different. So I'll talk. I'm going to speak to mine. Well, if I got $10 million, firstly, I'd probably take 99% of that, because we wouldn't need that to run the model. It's really lean and low cost. So, so for me, again, my passion is systems change and fundamentally shifting the experience of the majority, at least, of all kids as they go through their schooling. So for me, the vision is that kids go through their schooling and they develop their humanity, they become deeply connected to, you know, their community, and they develop a sense of purpose in life, and they are able to align their interests, like I said, to go back to that concept of Ikigai, that for kids, education does that for them. It helps them to discover their purpose in life, and everybody's purpose might look different. And it's not the system's role to define what success should look like. Success should just look like you being a happy, decent human. And so I suppose that's my dream, is a system that creates that experience for our young people. And the vision of how I can at least contribute that is, hey, for very little money, let's create a little model. We don't want to take over the world. We're not I guess we are business people in a way, but we're not looking to create this huge corporation called IDEA. We want a couple of models, enough to show that we can do it cheaply. We can deliver education cheaper than the public system currently does, because that's what we want to aim for. And then we can help to not only to create a pathway for schools to scale that type of model, but for schools that are already doing that, we want to have a community to just share that work. Because again, the innovations are there. It's just now about bringing them together and scaling them and making a policy. So we just want to contribute to that. That's my dream anyway. Mike, you might want to add to yours.
Yeah, look, and I think when you first spoke today, you talked about equity as well, Beck, in terms of your experience moving from Ireland and over here. And I think, that becomes, we don't want the system to be a barrier. There's a lot of issues in terms of social capital and aspirations raising, but really what we do is I just want everybody to reach their potential. And I want to support that development so that when they leave, they're going to be engaged, they're going to be confident, they're going to have that self-efficacy to move into the world and make a difference in their community, and in turn will help with their well-being as well, because they have a purpose, they feel like they're making a difference, they're connected. And so I think, that holistic development becomes very important. So, my dream would be, so I met a couple of students out 3 weeks ago, and they made the time to come up to me at a social event and just thank me for the opportunities I created for them in school. And look, they were disengaged in education. They ended up doing traineeships in warehousing, which is probably not the most glamorous thing. And look, I managed to connect them up and get them into it. But ultimately, they were the ones that were successful in that. So I guess the vision for me is, later on down the track, students come back and just say to me, look, what you did really helped me get forward. It made a difference, and now I'm successful. And, that's great for me. It gives me a fantastic feeling. I've had it before, and I feel like, if we can move students on and the system doesn't become a barrier to them unlocking their potential, and they're engaged and happy, active citizens, then yeah, that's good.
Nice, easy question, Elaine. Lovely question. Nice answering those types of questions.
Hello, Oscar. Do you have a question? Just joined us.
Yeah.
Hi.
Good to see you all. Good to see you, Rebecca, Adam, Elaine.
Hi, Oscar.
It's been a while. No, I don't have a question. I'm just listening in this time. As you may not know, I'm in the United States. I'm trapped in Silicon Valley right now.
Yeah.
Surrounded by fire. But anyway, that's a whole other story.
Seeing as you mentioned where you are, and Mike, you mentioned the charter school movement in the US as well. And I heard an interesting story. The charter school movement in the US, it's kind of these alternative models for education, and they're, highly regarded worldwide. And there's a particular school that, there's a documentary about it, and everyone kind of like salivates when we talk about this school. And so I met a teacher from Perth who had been to this school, and I was like, wow, like, what was it like?
Which
there?
school?
Like, yeah. I don't want to say. I'll tell you afterwards. I don't know if I should say, because it's not my story. It's not my story to relay, but I'll tell you later maybe. Anyway, so this guy, he said that, yeah, it's good, but it's teachers leave after 6 months because they get so burnt out, because the way it is like, it's just, get in there, you need to be on 24 hours a day. This is go, 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 go. So it's really not, it's horrible, not horrible experience, but it's a burning out experience for teachers. And so I guess that's another thing we are conscious about too, is like, we're creating a new model for students, but certainly for us, the people that work for us too, and ourselves as well. We want to create something different. And I think that's a lot
I
of
don't know.
stories coming out from Silicon Valley now to say that.
Yeah, I don't know what you guys said about charter schools, but being in Silicon
We didn't say
Valley,
much.
being in California, oh, okay. Our perspective and my perspective, because I've been teaching after school classes and one of the schools was a charter school, and talking to them, in general, at least among liberal people in California, charter schools should be abolished. They're just terrible.
Mm.
And
Yeah,
I've
that's
seen what you're saying, burned out. That does not surprise me. They're overworked, underpaid, worse than public school. And of course, there's a huge amount of things happening here in terms of education. One, of course, is defunding the police and getting them out of the schools. I don't see why you have to have policemen with guns running around public schools here, but they do. It really surprised me when I got here how different it changed since the last time I lived here.
mm.
And that's not also true, not as much with charter schools, but essentially it's making the gap between the rich and the poor further apart. Charter schools are for the rich, public schools are for the poor, and I have to say it's really mostly white versus people of color. And the United States is in probably the worst position I've ever seen in my 60 years of life and my 40 years of voting life. I've never seen it worse historically in the United States. I mean, anyway, I don't want to dominate this
Yeah, so
conversation. I could talk about politics and it'll drive you, it'll never stop me.
So Oscar, what we were saying was that in Australia, the curriculum's legislated. So there is no room for innovation at all. And we were just comparing it to the charter school in the US that can be. So I guess, and from us, we don't know a lot about them. We know High Tech High and a couple of other ones that seem to be having some good impacts by connecting more with industry and having a little bit more flexibility. But there was
I'm a big fan of most likely to succeed. I love that.
Yeah. So I guess it was around the innovation context and some of the restrictions, and that there are models in other countries that allow for a little bit more freedom, but obviously it seems to be that your experience or some of the schools are not as good.
I think there just needs to be a balance, and you probably don't realize one of the reasons I came to the United States because there was more opportunity at the time. Obviously now that all that opportunity is dried up, and now I'm teaching everything online, but that's a whole other story. But I agree in Australia, because when I've run my Gizmo Cats in Perth and Fremantle, I wasn't able to generate enough income from that. In the United States, I was able to do that. But now, especially now in the US, as things are getting more, let's just say things are different now in the United States, and that I'm fighting to get back into WA. I've applied 3 times to re-enter Australia and I've been rejected, but I'm fighting to get back in. Once I get back in, all my clients, once I'm in Fremantle and Perth, will probably still be in the United States because it's all online now, and they'll be locked down here for a while.
I think I'm conscious of the time because I know we only have 1 minute left, so I guess we can wind up there because we could talk for another hour about that. But yeah, I think balance. That's what you said, Oscar, and it's about balance. Yeah. And I think
there has to be a balance.
What we're seeing in the world today is like, as Chomsky would call it, like capitalism with the gloves off. And so I'm not an anti-capitalist, but I certainly think there's a lot of problems with it, but I don't think the solution is just to get rid of it. I think it's really about that integral, balanced approach. And so I guess that's part of the approach that we've taken with this is we want to work with the system and take the best of both worlds and kind of navigate it together. But we need an hour to chat through what you've just put on the table.
No, I agree with you. I agree with you and Kim. I am constantly following Kim, even though he spits out 10 posts a day, but I kind of follow what he's doing, and everything that's going on there, I think is fantastic.
All right, we're gonna have to wrap up now. Just have seen there's a couple of new people, and Billy, did you have any questions? I see you've been with us. We haven't heard from you.
Yeah, look, it's been really awesome listening in. Thanks, guys. Very kind of relevant to where I'm looking into and going, as well as my partner Noreen beside me. This is Noreen, everyone. And Noreen's actually like teaching emotional intelligence in schools and going in that direction and through the community as well.
A research program, mind you, a decade of research behind it from Swinburne University in Melbourne. Just wanted to add that in. I haven't just made it from thin air.
Yeah. And personally, like, I mean, I've been in music myself, but I'm also, what I'm stepping into also is like filling the gap, because there's so much that kids aren't learning in school, which is so relevant to what they need to learn to succeed and so forth. So I've actually started working with one student and writing a curriculum for what's really relevant and what they don't teach in school. So, I mean, like what you've made really clear is how challenging it is to work with the existing system in Australia. But yeah, it's really exciting that you guys are like making headway with that. And yeah, definitely open to possibly collaborating down the track. But yeah, I love everything that you're sharing and saying. It's really very much needed, and there's definitely like a lagging, a lot of catching up to do with the education systems. So thanks. Yeah, appreciate it.
It's cool. That's one thing I'm most excited about, is the fact that, because there are so many cool things out there, but it's so hard to get traction in schools, because schools are just inundated with stuff. You mostly hit the admin firewall. You don't even get through that. But there's so much cool stuff. So we want our model to be just really rich connections with informal service providers. So that becomes the key experience for students. So watch this space. Here's hoping.
Thanks everyone so much for joining, and thanks Rebecca and Mike for presenting this. As you said, we could continue this for another hour. We might have to do a part 2 later. Or follow up in
2021 more.
Yeah, it would be really good actually
when we have kids.
To do a follow up next, see what's going on. But yeah, thanks so much, and see you guys soon.